Hey, everybody, guess what day today is? It's Shit Talking Sunday, because every day is Shit Talking Sunday. And, we're here with Shit Talking with Sensible Chery. I am so happy that I got to meet this lady. She has opened my eyes as a father to all the things that are going on out here in this world that some of us are for and some of us are against. I'm utilizing this platform to bring awareness to what's going on, and let you be the judge, but we want to give you correct information so you can think about things logically, and think outside the box. Think about the effects of some of the things that are happening. But, without further ado, let's introduce you to the one, the only Sensible Chery. How you doing?
Hello. Good. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. Another day. You can hear my
Another day in
security
life.
enforcing security.
Well, you definitely started it right with talk about, these long-term implications kind of thing goes on. And so I was looking at the news in regards to the USDA tying our kids' school lunches to the LGBT policy. And so there's discussion about the federal funding that goes towards our school lunches for our children could be withheld if school districts don't uphold the include gender identity and sexual orientation into the protected class.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of thought about, or at least what's been crossing my mind goes into, grammar and established usage and least common denominator. As I say all those things, to me, least common denominator is we're humans. So if we start saying that there shouldn't be any discrimination against humans, I would think that that would encompass all classes. But what we've done is we've we've added gender being, female or race or, stuff like that, are all called out. Disabilities are called out as specific things that you shouldn't discriminate against. And yet I'm very confused as to why all doesn't mean all. So if we actually just said humans should not be discriminated against, would that not cover all classes?
Yes, yes, absolutely. You know what's so crazy for me? I was thinking the best analogy I could think about this, right? This LGBTQ community thing. Yes, I believe wholeheartedly that everybody has a right. Everybody, every human being has a right. Okay. But I believe that K through 6, they're not even thinking about sexual orientation at that age. So for me, um, I have to look at it from the standpoint of, if you took a pro black and a pro white person, their family, and you took their kids, kindergarten age through maybe even up till 6th grade, and you put them in a room together with some toys, it's just them two. They're going to play with each other and they're probably going to get along, especially if you don't have all the distractions of them worrying about what their parents are going to say or think, because the kids are impressionable. So if we're shoving all this LGBTQ stuff and heterosexual stuff in their face, because I'm not going to discriminate against any one particular sexual orientation, sex in general in these children's faces, um, they don't have a fair chance of really developing on their own. Some of them maybe will do it because they're trying to honor their parents, because this is normal to them over time. But then when they realize it as an older child, young adult, they would look at things a little bit differently and maybe have some shame. Either way, they're looking at it. Because if they're heterosexual and they're being forced to be gay, when they get older, they'll be shamed. Or if they're bi or gay and they're being forced to be straight, I mean, I get it on both sides. But
Right.
there has to be a time where it has to be, hey man, now you can make that choice. Now we could tell you the basics, but getting all into identify, because I was looking at the gingerbread man, and they were like, okay,
Oh,
your heart, this
yep.
is your what do you call it? This is your
You're right. Well, the identities in there.
expression, and then the genitalia area, it had male, female, and other, and there is no
Mhm.
other. We pee standing up or we pee sitting down. Okay, it's
Right.
there's not no in between, and either we can have babies or we can't. And I'm not saying that people who can't have babies, women who can't have babies because of medical or hereditary or whatever. I'm just saying gender as a whole. So
Right. Well, and that's the thing, like, so like the intersex, that would be your very minor percent, some say at least under 2% where it's intersex, and for some reason there's, some crossover between um, female versus male. But you're right, everybody else has a gender assigned at birth, which is very, we're trying to take grammar. This is one of those things where we're starting to get into a gray area with grammar. Um, Grammar is as an established usage. So when I made the comment to say that boys don't menstruate, and I was accused of being transphobic for making that statement has traditionally been true. Boys do not menstruate. But what's happening is when you start changing definitions or start adding to definitions, so transgender boy, which is actually a girl, um, or initially was a girl transitioning into a boy, they would potentially menstruate depending on where they are in the process. But the reality of it is they were female to start. And so
Right.
that doesn't change. But now when we say that boys now include, a boy is a boy that's traditionally been a boy,
Hmm.
um, boys don't menstruate is true. But when you start changing language and adding things to it, then a perception could be that, well, if I'm a transgender boy, then I menstruate if I haven't completely transitioned. So this is the side where, this attack on language, we need to get away from that. It's like, we get to the point of false advertising. Like, what's the FTC Act talks about unfair, deceptive advertising. We need to start thinking of long-term implications of this, and that might hurt someone's feelings, but the reality of it is, if you are a particular gender from birth, male or female, and then you make a choice, because that's just it. Like, I didn't have a choice in the color of my skin. And I know that that will raise some feathers too, because there's people who go, I can't choose who I love. I can't choose this. I think you can. It may be difficult. You may be drawn to it, but the reality of it is, we tell people, pedoph- pedophile is illegal. You shouldn't be with children under the age of 18. And yet we have gotten to a point in society where that's accepted. Yes, that shouldn't happen. But on the flip side, it still does. That doesn't make it right for those that choose to do that.
You
And so
know.
when so let's go down the sexual orientation, sexual identity thing,
Mhm.
protecting that class. So if somebody has been, because now when it comes to pedophilia and all that kind of stuff, it's minor attracted person is the new term that they're trying to use for somebody who is attracted to children. And so that makes it seem, I don't know, more accepting. But I ask you, if you have someone who identifies as a minor attracted person, and we go down the right route of protecting identities, are we then going to say that it would be discriminating against a minor attracted person if we want to allow them to work in a school with children?
No, I'll talk.
Because right now, if we had any kind of sexual predator, you wouldn't want those people around children. But if you openly say, well, I'm a minor attracted person, that's my identity, you can't discriminate against me, does that then force us to be in a situation where, well, because that's your identity and we can't discriminate, you can be around children?
Yeah. For me, you know, the whole underage thing. Look, a lot of children, a lot of kids, a lot of people, male, female, more so male, are getting in trouble because they're 18 or 19 sleeping with a 17 or 16-year-old, but there's 4 years difference in between people. If you have somebody who just a freshman and they hook up with a senior, because it happens in school, the senior graduates. Now the freshman is a sophomore, she's now maybe 15, maybe 16, but now the senior is 18. He can go to jail for statutory rape, but they were doing this long before that. So
Mm-hmm.
what's the, I mean, there has to be a happy medium. I get it. If you're 30 and you're sleeping with a 15-year-old, but where does it end?
Well, and
Because
that's the thing, but the real, like, that this is where everything gets so blurred, because I was just watching, I don't know, one of those little reels, and if you do hashtag age gap, there's a lot of things that can come up with that. So there was a 29-year-old and a 49-year-old, and at that age, maybe it doesn't seem, so taboo, but when you start backing it up and you get under the age of 18, so what's the difference? Where is that line? And like, there's exception, and who decided? Because the reality of it is, you know I think there's a lot of truth to age is just a number. There's a maturity level factor here. And so that's one of the issues that I have with us allowing children to make decisions, for themselves, and it's the adults that should be guiding them in
you know
regards to potential long-term consequences.
absolutely. But let's say somebody is 18,
Hmm.
uh, and the other person is 40. Look, you've had 18 years of life. Your parents should have guided you to some extent, and life experiences just in school and life should kind of prepare you for life, but your parents' morals and standards, if you're raised properly, I think will affect your thought process on age group of who you'd want to date. Maybe lack of a father in your life makes you want to date somebody way older. Maybe lack of a mother in your life makes you want to date somebody way older. So that's a hard one, but I think that once you're 18, it's none of my business. You're an adult. But there has to be some lenience, in between it. Say at 14, you shouldn't be having sex. At 14, you should not be having sex. I don't care if you're having sex with a minor or somebody over the age, you should not be having sex, period. I don't care if your parents approve of it, whatever, you shouldn't. There's other things that you need to be learning. After that, let's say 16. At 16, yeah, if you're having sex, man, the hormones is going and you ain't gonna be able to stop that. So it is what it is. But at what age is it not okay
I know
for somebody
it's a
over?
maturity level. There's a maturity level. I mean, even like when we go, I was thinking about that the other day, even when you talk about age though, it's, the reality of it is it's just the versus you can versus you should. So in regards to menstruating and puberty, there's girls that start their periods at the age of 12, sometimes even younger. I mean, I think it can go down as low as 8 years old and maybe some exceptions to that. But the reality of it is at the point when you can start menstruating, your body is physically capable of having a child. So where's even that line? And, historically, there were people having children at very young ages, and whether that was to procreate, if, early on or what it was, but your body's physically capable of having a child. Where does that play in? Because why would your body be physical capable if it was an absolute, this should not be happening?
So are you
Um,
saying, okay,
I don't know.
devil's
I mean,
advocate.
and like I said, I'm not justifying. There's a maturity level.
Right. Here,
Go
devil's
ahead.
advocate. Are you saying that
Yeah, no, go for it.
mentally, physically, when you start menstruating, you are mature enough, at least body wise, to start having sex? Is that what should be the
No, no,
telltale
no. So yeah,
sign?
it's the whole could versus should. I'm not saying that you're mature enough to have sex. I'm just saying that your body biologically is in a position to
Right,
be able to birth a child.
right. So should that be the legal age? Should would it be okay for us as society to say, if you're menstruating, you're an adult, because you're now
I know.
having adult, you could be a parent, you're menstruating, so the capabilities are there. Or what happens if, let's say, you do have an 8-year-old 9-year-old that started her period, she gets pregnant at 9 years old, 10 years old. Now that abortion is illegal, now this 8 or 9-year-old has a kid.
It's
uh
not illegal in all states.
okay, but
Stop
let's
that.
just right, but let's just for sake of argument, now we have a 9-year-old 10-year-old just delivered a baby. Is that 10-year-old an adult now? Should that 10-year-old be allowed to go
Right.
in and make all these decisions that they want to make because they have a kid, they are a parent? So
Right.
does that give them rights now? I mean, where does it end, where does it begin?
No, I know. That's why this needs to be a bigger. I agree with you 100%. Like, where's that line? We need to be having these discussions. Even assigning ages to things, I don't think that's appropriate because,
No.
like this idea of we take it back to schools because that is where my heart is. who decided around the age of 5 or 6 that a child is ready for kindergarten? And that is the age that children should start kindergarten. But there are plenty of children that are not ready. There's some certain things that they should be able to do before they're interacting with other kids and being and expected to be in a classroom environment. It's just like this idea that we're putting hard numbers or hard rules in place. We've gotten to the point where we are starting to make our rules based off of the exceptions versus making exceptions to the rule. And so, this whole idea that it's like, okay, 16, you can drive, 10 here, 10, you can stay home by yourself. You know, my 10-year-old son, I would be comfortable with him staying at home. But when my daughter was 10, there's no way in hell.
Mhm.
So there's a trust factor, there's a maturity factor, there's so much more that should be going into these blatant rules. Just the same thing like with abortion. The whole line is viability is the question that's coming up more and more. It's just like at 9 months, I not agreeing with abortion, but there's some people that are like, well, it should be your choice, what have you. But at the same time, is that still your choice at 9 months? And they are sucking a baby's brain out of the back of their head in order to do an abortion at 9 months. Like, that's okay. um, these discussions need to be put to the forefront and not just be plastered under these umbrella terms. And we need to stop sugarcoating them in regards to, instead of saying abortion, there's people trying to say, oh, don't say abortion anymore. Say women's health, reproductive rights, because it sounds so much better. Let's call it what it is
Sounds
when we're
softer.
discussing what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're aborting a life, so it is what it is. Yes. Um, you know, See, that's such a difficult subject. But I will say that as soon as there's a heartbeat, there's a life. Okay. For sure, 100%. I don't care if they have limbs or not. When there's a heartbeat, there's a life. Um, whether they feel pain or not, man, I don't know. That's the question. Do ants feel pain when you step on them? Do mosquitoes scream when you smack them? I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions that you would ask in regards to that. Um, but man, abortion, look, there should be penalties. Abortion is taken so lightly that there are habitual abortionalists, if that's even a word, that don't care. They're anti-condom, they're anti-pull-out. They're all right. We can fix it with the plan B or a quick abortion, and so I'm just going to keep it moving. But we don't live in a society that's like that. There's too many other things that are killing people. Just like, all right, and this might not be fair. I'm not throwing this at the LGBTQ community, but they are saying, and when I say they, the news media and everything, and I'm not saying all news is correct, but they are saying like the monkeypox outbreak that's going on right now is being spread primarily through uh, non-heterosexual people. Not saying that heterosexual people are not getting it, but they're saying it's being spread more rapidly through the gay community.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so, I mean, at what point does our rights start coming into play when we say, okay, wait, right now it's an epidemic. So now, because it's an epidemic and they're saying that gays are the spreader of this, should we ban all gays?
Right. Well, and this
Where does
goes
this
back to
go?
the whole AIDS epidemic. I mean, AIDS was in that community as well.
Mhm.
Um, and so, there shouldn't be discrimination based on those kind of things, and those people need healthcare and everything like that. Those are the kinds of things, like, everybody should have equal access. It's just like, because of the personal choices you make. But like, even to this day, like with there were people that from the COVID vaccine, there were people that were being refused to be treated if they had not received their vaccine in hospitals. Like, that is
That's crazy.
unacceptable.
That's
It's
crazy.
just like, And so it's like, so at what point, and it's just like they put, when we go to these words, it's like, if you say that somebody rapes you, that's bad, right? It's against your will and it's rape and that's bad. But we slap the label of mandate on it. We're going to mandate you to get a vaccine because we believe that's right, against your will, or you'll lose your job. Like
Right.
that is not right at all. All the healthcare providers that were, they were heroes when there was no vaccine at all, and
Right.
they were treating patients left and right with being exposed every day. And then all of a sudden they're told, once there's a vaccine available, well, you have to take this now. That is, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that makes zero sense to me.
Yeah.
Zero sense. But if you start looking into things like there's a user, let me see, I think I jotted it down. The User Fee Act. Back in 1992, the User Fee Act started to go into place, which allowed the FDA to collect fees from the same companies that are producing human drugs and biological products. So 45% of the FDA's budget comes from the fees to approve the drugs, expedite the approval of the drugs that these companies are trying to send through. Like, that's a conflict of interest to me. And I think it seems like in the research that I did, that part of that had to do with, the frustration even during the AIDS epidemic, where you had people that were dying, and the process of approval for drugs for people that were dying, it's just like they wanted access. They wanted the ability to try these. Those are the kind of things where that's like the pendulum is going too far on both sides. If there's a drug that that your life expectancy is extremely shortened, and you want to take the risk and you sign all the paperwork, you want to take the risk, you should be allowed to do that, understanding that the risk might be the same thing that you're trying to get away from, or something else. And just take that accountability. If we make people accountable, there's so many, I don't know. It's crazy. And we have just allowed for too many potential corruption issues. The idea that there isn't, we talk about peer reviewed research and stuff like that, but it seems like even the peer reviewed research, you've got the same people peer reviewing. And so just because somebody peer reviewed it makes it, gospel. I don't know that you can vouch for that. You're supposed to be able to replicate things. If you can't replicate things in science, then is it truly science?
Right.
I don't know. There's so many things. Like even identity. We go back to identity. So can I identify, because I me, I'm a research junkie. Can I identify as somebody who has a college degree even though I don't? Because I've decided that I've done enough research.
That's your right. People do it all the
Right.
time.
Shouldn't
People
I?
claim to have degrees all the time. Hey, we're innocent till proven guilty. So if we go apply for a job as a doctor, it's the hospital's job to do their due diligence to make sure that you are hiring qualified individuals to be in that position. That's why there's licensing. Just like I went to the state, got my life insurance license, I am qualified to sell life insurance. But should you be able to sell life insurance without you being qualified? You should be able to look at the software, but to approve it and all that other stuff, no, you need a license, because at the end of the day, there are some rules and regulations you definitely need to know about, money laundering, all kinds of stuff, because, money laundering is a big thing in this world. So I think, making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do and have the proper credentials is definitely going to be important. But people do it all the time, say who they are or not. And we probably even have people in office right now that have no business being in office. And also, one last thing before you say so, the healthcare stuff that you were talking about, why is it that we, the people, have Medi-Cal, Medicare, Medicaid, and very marginal health care, when our elected officials, who are supposed to have the same kind of health care as us people, have exceptionally better health care than even the most middle class,
Mm-hmm.
they have better insurance than most of us. How is that
Mm-hmm.
even possible? Why is that even fair? Especially when they're voting on things that some politicians go and say, hey, we need to start giving this. No, 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 we're not giving that. That's going to cost too much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why is it unaffordable for us to have it, but you guys are entitled to it as
Right.
senators? That's why I say term limits, term limits, for all, because that will
Yeah.
end some of the corruption that's in our politics. That's why presidents were not allowed to be um, lifers. Look what's going on with
Yeah.
some of the other presidents in some of these foreign countries who've been long-term presidents
Mm-hmm.
and what they're doing to their countries. But go ahead, back
Well,
to you.
and well, and that's the thing. Like, I think there's a big part of we the people have forgotten that we the people are supposed to be the leads of this government. We elect these people into these positions. But we've got to do our own checks and balances. But I think out of this, people are definitely way more involved than they've ever been. We've got public comment is becoming a huge thing, where these agencies that are setting out these rules or creating these rules, establishing these rules because they're allowed to by law. Um, there's a process that's always been in place, but we've been very I don't know, whether we're asleep, got our heads buried in the sand or what have you, that we just trust our elected officials to do what's best for us. But there's more and more of us that are starting to feel like they're not being heard. And, you talk about, these bipartisan plans, but they're things that seem to get shoved from one side or the other. And that's not bipartisan when you can't come to an actual agreement. And not to say that you have to agree on anything, but the idea of acceptance doesn't have to be agreement. And that kind of wraps into all of this, is where we're associating the fact that in order for you to accept something, you have to agree with it. And that's not true. You do not have to agree with it to accept something. But you could work together to figure out what are you both willing to accept that you can agree upon. And those are the conversations that don't seem to be happening. And so this whole idea of whether it's far left or far right, um, that is totally unacceptable. You talked about the term limits and stuff like that, and people being in places where they didn't belong. Well, I had never heard the term rhino until probably, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so ago. And it's RINO, Republican in name only. you know these party lines are driving me crazy, that it's just like it's a blue wave, a red wave. And it's just like, I know where I fall on the spectrum and I have my biases,
Mhm.
but I'm not so far on one side that I can't come to an agreement where it's just like, okay, I can see how this can work for both of us.
It's so crazy, right? I was looking at something today about the January 6th insurrection, and there was a guy named Mark something, black guy. He was arrested for being part of that insurrection, and I want to say he was sentenced to 53 or 63 months for it. One of the longest sentences out of the insurrectionists. Um, the fact that he was black and got more than the whites, not saying that it's a black or white thing, but that just goes to show the inequality that goes on in America. The crazy part of it, not to discount the fact that the guy did it. I'm not saying I'm not on his side or nothing, but when something along the lines of you're black or something like that, and he goes, no, I'm mega, I'm MAGA, I identify as MAGA. Uh, well, he found out that day that didn't matter. That he was still black at the end of the day. The judge that sentenced him, so we could say, oh, that wasn't fair, but she was also black. So there was no, I'm not going to say bias, but if anything, we hold ourselves, our own races, to a higher standard because we want to make sure we know that ain't right. Our race seems to want to keep our race in check when it comes to laws and being reprimanded for stuff that you're doing wrong. And maybe there should be some praise to it, but when it's unfairly given, that's when there's the problem.
No, I agree with that. But in this day and age, in regards to somebody who claims that they're a Trump supporter, there was so much adversity against that the Trump supporter could have trumped his race, even though it doesn't necessarily appear that way. But it's hard to say, but
Yeah.
I hear you. I mean, but that's where there's so many layers,
Mm,
and there should be some absolute truths. Like, okay, so if this is what you did, this should be the result, no exceptions.
right.
It's like it shouldn't be so like sentencing shouldn't vary based on anything except for whatever the crime was.
Right.
And so it's just like, if you steal, this is the result. If you murder, this is the result. Like, I don't, and then we go into like intent and all this other kind of stuff,
But
but
you
there
know,
should
so
just be
crazy.
layers.
You say that, right?
Huh?
If you steal, there's in some of these other countries, you steal, they chop stuff off. Now,
Right.
is their crime level higher than ours? Because people know
Mm-mm.
you take this, we got it on film that you took it, you lose a limb. That's a
Right.
big deterrent. So if you rape somebody, then you get raped. There might not be a whole lot of people getting raped. You kill somebody, we kill you. The eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, all that. There's some truth to it, but the only problem with it is those things can be lied.
Right.
For you to enforce those extremes, there has to be unequivocal evidence, and that's where the
Right.
problem is, that what we see and what they see are two different things. And I'm not saying us, them, just in general. What one person sees is different than what another person sees. Prime
Right.
example is Rodney King. That man got his butt whooped. There was no reason for that, and all of them to basically get acquitted. Get the F out of here. Okay, that was a prime example of police brutality, and there's no excuses.
Right. No, and that's the thing. Like, we have so many, there needs to be accountability, and we do not have that. And a lot of the issues that people bring up are, the exceptions, because that is not how a majority of our police forces work. And so, but that's where the labeling comes into play too, is that it only takes one bad apple to spoil the bunch. And so, not like we have just one bad apple. We have a lot of bad apples in a lot of different places.
Oh yeah.
But there's also some good apples.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so
Yes. Majority
making
of
people
police are great.
huh?
I'm going to say majority of police are good officers. I just think that defunding the police, no. I think the funding should be where it's at, just more education, proper education that evolves with the time. And, maybe I forgot what it's called, but it's something about something immunity for police officers should maybe not be as open, so vague. Some things, when you violate certain rights, immunity should not. If you commit a crime to the point where you're culpable in a held liable in a court of law,
Right.
then that should be taken out of your pension, not from the state, and that will make officers think a little bit more before they react, and they will depend upon body cameras more, which will make law and order more visual so that we can see with our own. It's sensible. Like that's why I love the fact that your name is Sensible Chery, because it's just come on, it's common sense. Some of these things, if we just made a couple little twerks,
Right. Right.
it would make a
Well,
big difference.
yeah. Well, no, even with the, the liability with the big pharma, with all of this, the vaccine approval, they had significant waivers with this emergency use authorization, to be able to provide this vaccine to everybody and anybody that wanted it. And I'm not opposed to that. But where the lines got blurred is so they are not held liable for any damages for anybody who
Right,
is taking this under the emergency use authorization. The problem
right,
I have with that is when all of a sudden government starts deciding, okay, this is available to people as it should be, but now we are forcing people to take this when there's no liability to the company who rushed it through. I'm sorry. That's the whole thing of
right,
emergency use means it's an emergency and it hasn't necessarily gone through the entire vetting process as it should. And apparently our vetting process through the FDA has decreased rapidly over the years. Not to say that some of that doesn't have to do with technology and the advancements that we've had, but I'm also so sick and tired of hearing, people complain, well, there's just not enough research on that. There's not enough evidence to say that this is doing any harm. Well, you know what? Start doing it. Start getting the evidence to prove the point instead of just saying that it's not there. Why wouldn't you want to go above and beyond to ensure that it's completely safe if you had zero concerns? And so, this whole idea that we are taking people's right, this do no harm, that is huge. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of harm that's coming. I know Asante just started sending out our numbers, and it's just like, I remember the daily numbers that have been going on for the last 2 years of deaths, with our local hospitals, and they were blasting it in everybody's face because, the unvaccinated were high. Well, if you start looking at the numbers that are coming out on their daily report now, it is now that there are more deaths in those that have been boosted than there are deaths for the unvaccinated or the vaccinated. And the unvaccinated are the lowest number of deaths. Nobody's talking about that. All of a sudden we're scraping that under the table. Oh, well, it's all these unvaccinated people. Well, isn't it interesting that now that we've gotten so many people in our country vaccinated, and now those that are left unvaccinated are actually starting to fare better than those that were vaccinated and boosted? But we
um,
don't want to talk about that.
it's crazy that everybody that I know that has taken the vaccination has caught COVID. Every single person that I've
Well,
met,
because the vaccine and it was from a variant from the beginning of this epidemic pandemic.
and,
It's like
and
you can't just, it's like it mutated and changed, and it still is. And even the ones that they're revising right now,
can
it's
I
from
start
a
conspiracy?
previous variant.
I want to start conspiracy theory. You ready? What
Okay.
if? What if the vaccine that they gave, that all these pharmaceutical companies, it was real easy to have all these bigger politicians and officials come out and take a shot of um, uh, what is it, saline in the arm, and call it COVID vaccine, and let everybody else take it. How is that not possible? That could be a theory. Because think about this: our president has caught COVID not once but twice, and he's vaccinated, boosted, and all that other stuff. And some of these other people are starting to get it too, and they're realizing that, hey, um, yeah, we pushed all this out, and a lot of people are getting it, and maybe the big wigs that didn't get the vaccination gave it to all the 98%, and out of those 98% they took it, but then they're not realizing that everything that you do down here eventually bubbles up to the top, just like
Mhm.
crack. When they introduced crack to the poor communities, yes, it went rampant and it killed a whole bunch of the poor, and messed up a whole lot of lives. But now it's moving up to the point where now it's affecting even the rich. Now the rich are seeing that their kids are going into rehab. And that's why a lot of these laws are starting to convert and change, because the richer families are starting to have their families incarcerated for the same kind of crimes and not wanting them to do long term. So they're legalizing certain things. Conspiracy.
Well, there's so many. The big thing that I think that isn't discussed with all of this when it comes to that is the underlying health conditions. Because the reality of it is, it's our underlying health conditions that played the biggest factor regarding into your severe outcome with that virus. And so in this day and age where we have so many underlying health factors that have been skyrocketing over the years, obesity, and it's like FDA, that what they approve, and they approve stuff with our foods. And if you start looking at the recall list, there's things that are being recalled all the time that were
Oh, I think we lost her for a second. We lost her. Hopefully she'll come right back. Maybe she'll reset. But anyway, for me, man, the whole little laws of this vaccination and all that stuff to me is semi crazy, because it just shouldn't be like that. Um, your body, your choice. And we're realizing now and seeing now that your body, your choice, yes. But at some point now, those rights are gone. Those rights are gone. So what do we do? What do we do? For me, you just got to keep the faith and make sure that everybody is going to do the things the right way, and be sensible about it. We have her back. Sensible Chery. What happened?
I don't know. I think your conspiracy theory conversation, they don't like what I'm saying.
That's funny.
But anyway, I don't know. We have about 10 minutes left, it looks like. So, we've really got to we need to start having deeper conversations, and it needs to include all walks of life and all views, and we need to be able to do it civilly. I know there's some other stuff going on for at least us in Oregon with our they just does a wildfire map for the entire state that's causing an uproar. It's Senate Bill 762, because they've classified all tax lots, not all, wherever you fell in either high or extreme. And I think that actually equated to like 120,000 tax lots. But they just have this map that went out, and they've classified properties as high or extreme. And now you have people questioning, what does this mean? What is this going to do to our, our property values, our insurance? And they're acting as if there's no implications, and like, no, it shouldn't impact your insurance. But there's people that have gotten increases in their insurance from $800 to $2,000 already, and they're saying, well, it has nothing to do with this map. But the insurance company is providing links to the map that was released a few weeks ago, saying, oh, this is why your property's been classified as high. And then there was like, what's the reasoning behind why they classified? They didn't take. There's a lot of things they didn't take into consideration, but then there's things that they did. So instead of defensible space and stuff like that, which we'll be responsible for, or home hardening, what products you build your house with, which is supposed to apply to new construction, they went based off like vegetation, which I don't think that they went property to property to look at that. How often a fire has actually been, if you're, in the wildfire. And so you have people that are freaked out because they're like, I have a property that's got water around me. The chances are slim, that we would be impacted by fire, and we were listed as high, but I have a cabin in the middle of the woods and it was listed as moderate. And maybe it was listed as moderate because there was a fire within 5 year range, because apparently if there's a fire every 5 years, you're going to be considered moderate versus high, because the likelihood of there being another fire once you've been wiped out is slim. I mean, it's just like it's this whole long-term implications, and people just rush forward and be like, well, we're in a crisis. So we have to do this. But they don't think it through.
You know, yeah, I agree. We need deeper conversation. But the reason why we're not having deep conversation anymore is because our politicians are in so many different pockets now that nothing can get pushed through, because everybody's agenda now is who has the most money to push their agenda to allow the most exposure. There's a lot of people out there that have great views and great ideas. They just don't have the money to
right.
to get those ideas in front of people to get them implicated. You know, that's why, you know, I mean, somebody out there should start a movement, and it's probably not going to be received very well in Congress, but term limits definitely would make a difference. Maybe not necessarily 4 years like presidents, but, you know, there definitely needs to be change in the people that we consider representatives of us, because a lot of our representatives have been there for 60 years, 50 years, 40 years, and their views are so back in the day, because, you know, that say you can't teach an old dog new tricks is kind of obvious here. You know,
right.
20 years of being, yes, you could do a lot of good, but hey, spread it around. You're a senator, now run for a different branch, a different type, you know, change it up a little bit, make a difference. If you want to stay in politics, stay in politics. You can make a career out of it, but, you know, run the spectrum and don't stay in one spot, because your views are changing or are not changing.
Yeah. No, well, and it's interesting because as I start looking at the agencies that are part of committees within our House and all that, and the Senate, it seems like there's consistent people that are on the same committees year over year over year. And if it's broken, then shouldn't we have some kind of vetting process as opposed to these people just being appointed to committees year over year over year?
Yeah, absolutely. Think about it. If our senators are not getting the job done, take their asses out. The leadership, oh, I want to be House leader, or oh, I want to be, you know, this and that. Well, you took the lead. You did it for 2-4 years. Nothing happened. You got to go. On either side, it don't matter. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. You got to go. It's still bad. You know, when we had presidents that were great. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and it's hard because on the flip side of that, there's the learning curve, you know, to play devil's advocate to, you know, long-term people, is that when people are constantly changing all the time, it doesn't allow for change. And, you know, the one thing with our government and a lot of these other things that have so much red tape, it takes time for change to happen. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's like even with our presidents, it seems like they're always blaming each other for, well, it was because of that one or this one. And yet some of the things that were implemented, it can go either way. Like a president or a particular legislator can see the benefits that somebody else did. It just happened to come to fruition while they were there. You know what I mean? And by good or bad. Right. And so it's really hard to, you know, we need to look deeper. Like, you know, what was this? You know, it's just like for everything that you want to credit for, how much did you truly impact that? How much of that was directly related to your decision making versus somebody else's that may have been before you?
You know, we all know that when a president leaves office, the next president in line for at least the first year, sometimes 2, the actions of the previous administration is what's happening currently. So the changes don't even happen until year 3, and sometimes year 4. That's why some of these
Right.
presidents after year 4 get reelected, because they've had time to turn things around from the mess ups of the previous administration. You know, there will, I don't think that there's ever going to be a happy medium with it, because there's so many extremes on both sides. There's too many people far right, and there's too many people far left, and there's not a lot of people with common sense in the middle.
You know
Because
what? I disagree with that. I think there are a lot more people with common sense in the middle, but they haven't been vocal. They've allowed the extremes from both sides to rule the roost.
okay, I
And
agree with
it
that.
is time for the common sense people, because so many of them, like, they just want to live their life, and don't want to have to deal with this. And it's just like, it's time for us to wake up and deal with what's going on and make sure that our voices are heard. Because,
You,
it's just like the thing, like, even with the menstrual dignity thing, my husband's like, why are you so caring about this particular issue? And I'm like, because it's the beginning. Like, we think that just putting tampons in boys' bathrooms is the beginning. What's next? If nobody says anything and we just let that go, like, it's no big deal, just put tampons in boys' bathrooms, no big deal. What's the next thing? Like, it's the boiling frog. The frog didn't die instantly. It was a very slow process of just allowing things to happen, allowing them to happen. And then it's just like, oh, how did we get here?
I can agree with that. You know what's so crazy? Think about this. So now we've allowed um, the control to be where now we're putting feminine hygiene in male bathrooms. And what if the sexual transmitted diseases start spiking to a point where our youth are being affected? Because they were. I mean, when I was going to school, I know that we were hearing about people having STDs, and the only way that could be, I mean, how is that happening if it isn't with somebody having sex with somebody who is older, having sex with somebody who's a minor, and now they've let it go rampant into the youth? But what if they decide we're going to put condoms in the budget, and we want those in all bathrooms, including women's bathrooms?
Right.
I mean, where
Right.
does it,
No,
that could be the next level.
no, you're right. And that's just it. Like, they, I think that it's like, you have to go back and look, and, I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure that there were some studies, and I'm sure studies can be manipulated, but studies that showed that there was an increase in sexual activity once they started incorporating sex education into the classroom, whereas, like, STDs and stuff had been on the decrease, and then all of a sudden they started increasing. You can't tell me that exposing our children to this information doesn't cause them to be curious and potentially getting into the middle of things that they otherwise wouldn't.
Look,
So we have to be very careful of what we are teaching our children, and this whole age appropriate thing needs to be really highlighted. We really need to have big conversations on age appropriateness across the board.
absolutely, absolutely. So crazy. Think about this. Um, if you take a child, male or female, when their hormones are doing things in their body that they're not quite grasping yet because the hormones are changing, and you throw pornography at them, of course, and this is extreme, because I am comparing sex ed to pornography as an extreme. Let's just say, if you showed a child underage pornography, are they not going to be aroused like an adult? And that will encourage them to want to go out there and start having those type of relationships. That's why, just like you said, the point of exposing them to sex ed at such an early age only enhances their desires to want to have fornication.
Right.
So, yeah, like I said, I think yes, at a certain age, maybe there should be basic, like birds and bees, but sexual orientation and all that. That shouldn't be something that should be taught in school, but maybe let people be aware that they exist a little bit, but not
Right.
so explicit on you need to point this out. No, you need to point out that you're human, and you use the woman's bathroom and you use the male's bathroom. Until you can pee in a urinal, you should be in the girl's bathroom. When I
Mm-hmm.
um, when we have little kids, most of the time when they're with the parents, the female takes the child into the bathroom, male or female child, into the bathroom to use the bathroom, because we just know that it's cleaner. There's not piss all over the seats. So we know psychologically that a woman's bathroom is going to be cleaner. So, man, all the things that they're doing just is crazy to me. It shouldn't be.
No, I agree.
You got to go in one, not the other. They're at their age, they're not making the choice of sex change. They're still they still have the proper organs. Um, are they uncomfortable? If you're a woman and you recognize as a man, are you uncomfortable peeing in a woman's bathroom? Hey, you know what? I can understand where you could be, but you're still inside of a stall. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What makes it worse? Now you're a woman who identifies as a man, but you're not peeing in a urinal. You're still going in a stall. And a man who identifies as a woman is probably not gonna pee in a urinal unless it's convenient. We're out in having we're camping. I'm not gonna squat. I'm just gonna pull it out and pee because it's out of convenience. I mean, so don't force all these issues on us. Bathrooms are what they are.
Right.
If you want to have a gender neutral bathroom, hey man, I guess in public, stuff that is public oriented, yes, put availability for, just like we have family friendly bathrooms, and call
Right.
it a
And
day.
that would be more reasonable to me, is to
Yeah,
like if,
and
if
call
I
it
saw something come across saying that there needed to be a gender neutral bathroom within a certain radius of, students, that would be acceptable.
yeah, and
But
finish in
to
those bathrooms, you know, that and the female bathroom. I would get that, but I mean, across the board, like you said, you're a woman. You know when menstrual cycles start on the youngest age. That's when it's appropriate to put them in. Now, sixth
right,
grade and under, look, not very many um, kids, third, second, and first in kindergarten are having menstrual cycles. So if they are, then have them go to the nurse's office, and that would I think alleviate that issue. Um, I think for the most part we've covered everything that we wanted to cover today. Um, I think that, let's be sensible. Let's look at things from a point of view of uh, less control, more education, and I think that things will get a little bit better. So, uh, look, we went over a little bit. I'm gonna let you say something in closing. Get whatever off your chest you need to do or say, and I'm giving you the floor.
yeah, I would definitely be interested in hearing from anybody else who's watching. Any questions or just any thoughts or even any other topics that they would, be interested in seeing a discussion on. But other than that, I'll continue to stay involved. We need to protect our children, and we need to be voices for ourselves and for them. And regardless of where you stand, you need to be able to have civil conversations, and we should be able to talk about these things. So that's
absolutely
it. Till next week.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks again. I appreciate you taking time out your busy day and schedule to come out here and give us a sensible conversation from a shit talking standpoint. Remember, shit talking does not have to be synonymous with negativity. As you can see with this podcast, we're taking shit talking to a positive level where we're just trying to educate you. Hopefully you're thinking outside the box. Hopefully you're thinking a little deeper. And remember, each one teach one, and we all can grow. If you don't, we're all going to perish. Life is way too short for us to be sweating the little things. We should definitely be worried about the big things. And loss of control is one of them. And I'm going to tell you, me personally, I don't like it when somebody tells me how to raise my children, especially when I don't necessarily agree with their views. So if we continue to allow people to change our opinions or control our opinions and our views, we will no longer be parents. Because look at it from this standpoint, corporal punishment has been taken from the people who really know how to utilize discipline properly to keep our children in line. I'm not saying that they have to be beat, because I didn't necessarily beat my children to discipline them. But when you take that option off the table, the fear for them goes away. And then what we get is the product of what we have in society now. Think about that. Give it some thought. Next week, hopefully, some of y'all will chime in. Email me, agthedad@shittalkingsundays.com. I'm interested to know what's on your mind, what you got to talk about. If you like what you've heard, hit that notification button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button, especially that subscribe button, so you know when we go. Every Monday, 9 a.m., it's your boy, AG the Dad, shit talking with Sensible Chery. I got nothing but love for y'all. Peace. I'm out.
goes out to all the mothers out there.
And we just wanted you to know
I'm thankful for you, for all the times you you all the times I made you mad, depressed or even sad. I'm thinking it's just a fad. I apologize for it all, you're all I ever had. I'm thankful you gave me birth, I'm thankful for all you give. I'm thankful for the fact you love me and you love my kids. I'm thankful for what you taught me, I'm thankful for the Most High. I'm thankful we can talk and finally see eye to eye. I'm thankful you raised me strong, I'm thankful you raised me right. But most important, I'm thankful to have you in my life. I'm thankful for you, for all the times you whipped my ass just to keep me in line. I'm thankful for you,
everything you've done and you do just to keep me standing on two.
I'm thankful for you, cause you stand so strong and have my back even though I'm wrong. I'm thankful for you,
and without you I'd be a mess, man, or nothing at all. We didn't have a pot to piss in, but kept food in the kitchen. Hard-headed and wouldn't listen, that's why you were always bitching. Couldn't see the bigger picture, thought you relied too much on scriptures. Only now I'm realizing you can't take none of this with you. Working 2 9 to 5s, fighting just to survive. Walking a straight line while I waste potential and time. Calling that mess a grind, I was just rotting my mind. Thinking about it, crying, how could I be so blind? A blessing, that's what you are to have carried us all so far. I'm thanking you from my heart for bearing all of those scars. I'm telling you from the start, you never tore us apart. You never left us to suffer. The reason I craft this art, the reason I got this smile, the reason I got this game, the reason I got this style, the reason I'll never change is you. Cause without you I could never be the same, and that's the main reason why I would never quit saying
I'm thankful for you, for all the times you whipped my ass just to keep me in line. I'm thankful for you,
everything you've done and you do just to keep me standing on two.
I'm thankful for you, cause you stand so strong and have my back even though I'm wrong. I'm thankful for you,
and without you I'd be a mess, man, or nothing at all.
Sunday morning drama is calling up my mama. Drama.